What is up, guys? Norm along with Mike for Thursday, September 3rd, 2020. This is the podcast, the Leafs Convo for Oakridge Ford. The Stanley Cup playoffs continue on. Tampa into the Eastern Conference Final. The Islanders and Philly sorting out their differences, as are the Stars and the Avalanche and Vegas, Vancouver. Who's going to be in the final? Who's going to win it all? That remains to be seen. And what's going to happen with the Maple Leafs? So that's what we're going to talk about right now. Mike Augello, good morning.
Good morning, Norm. Yeah, it's funny because we're fully involved in the pursuit going to the conference final, the Stanley Cup playoffs, but it just seems that the news regarding the Leafs, starting with the Kapanen deal, and now this increased speculation regarding Frederik Andersen. I mean, it just seems to be Leaf Central right now, at least in Toronto, and at least, in the world that we focus on. This is, it started as a little bit of a rumor, and now it's grown to the point where I would almost be surprised if it doesn't happen in terms of Frederik Andersen getting traded.
It's always been Leaf Central for us, the Leafs central and integral to our frustration and the pain that we live with every single day, but that's okay. We're gluttons for punishment. So the speculation over a Freddie Andersen move out of Toronto is not dying. As a matter of fact, it's increasing. Is this just because of the news cycle? Is it because of social media, or do you think there's something there?
Oh, I think there's something there, and I think it's mostly because of the landscape of the NHL right now in terms of free agency and the number of goaltenders that are potentially available on the market. I mean, you have to realize that we're 1 year out from the expansion draft. Teams can only protect one goaltender, so teams with two goalies or goaltending situations would make one of their goalies available. The situation, I mean, you have a couple areas where, say, for example, Pittsburgh, which I've talked about ad nauseum with Tristan Jarry and Matt Murray, both restricted free agents. Pittsburgh's already made the move for Kapanen. Both of those goalies are arbitration eligible restricted free agents, and if they sign them both, one would be exposed in the expansion draft. So Jim Rutherford is looking to make changes with the Penguins and will likely move one of them. And based on the fact that Jarry's coming off an entry-level deal and Murray is coming off 2 Stanley Cups and a bridge deal, and probably will be looking to make, over $5 million on a new contract, it sounds like they're going to go with Jarry, maybe bring in a veteran backup and trade Murray because he has the 2 cups under his belt. That's like a number of situations. All the free agent goaltenders, Marc-Andre Fleury might be on the move with Vegas if they re-sign Leonard. Darcy Kemper in Arizona might be available if the Coyotes rebuild. The whole landscape here fits for the Leafs going out and going a new direction in goal because they can, and because the prices might be a little lower. And with Andersen 1 year left on his contract and 80% of his salary already paid in signing bonus, he would make a very attractive piece to a team looking for a number one goaltender.
We like transactions, Mike, but does any of this amount to an upgrade in net?
Only if they choose the right goaltender. I mean, I've been a fan of Matt Murray. The only concern with him has been his durability. He's been injured, I think, every year in his career. He did not have a particularly good season last year, and he was out for a while. And then when he came back, it was sort of a goaltending tandem between him and Jarry. So that would be my only concern with him. I mean, I don't think you would scoff at a Marc-Andre Fleury or a Corey Crawford with their Stanley Cup credentials.
But are they, Mike? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
But are they at the juncture in their career where they can saddle up in Toronto and be the stalwart, be the backstop for a team that's got to make a run
at their stage of their career? you're talking probably a 2 year. Well, I mean, Fleury signed for another 2 years. Crawford's a free agent. He would probably be a very short term deal, 2 or 3 years. It's sort of like what the Leafs went through with after Cujo left with via free agency. They went out and signed Eddie Balfour to a shorter term deal, and Balfour was, I think, in his late 30s at that point, but he's still a great goaltender. I mean, whoever they go with, it might be a transitional goalie, but it might be somebody who provides an upgrade over over Andersen, because they haven't been able to get out of the first round for the 4 years he's been here. It's not all on him, but I believe that the target for them would be somebody who's younger than Andersen and who they can address their goaltending
Hmm.
for the long term. And if you look at that, that would be, Jacob Markstrom with Vancouver, or Robin Lehner,
Wow.
or Matt Murray.
Sure, this is motivated by change, not as if the Leafs brass is displeased with what Freddie Andersen has done, but this is driven by a financial decision that could impact where money is allotted.
It's multi-dimensional. I mean, Freddie Andersen is a free agent after next year. He will probably
Mm,
have had, he's had 4 really good years in the regular season. The playoffs is up for debate.
hmm
After a fifth year, if he has another good year, then the Leafs are going to have to pay him. They're going to have to pay him probably a significant raise over a $5 million salary. And if they get a goaltender who they think is just as good or better, and they get him in a flooded market where teams can't,
Yep.
players can't ask for $7 million, you don't know whether the landscape for goaltending next July is going to be the same. So it's Kyle Dubis being proactive, but also, they need to address their defense. They need to improve their defense. And I also think that you're probably going to see more of a 1A, 1B scenario with whoever comes in as the goaltender, with Jack Campbell getting probably 30 games and playing like some of the other situations in the league in terms of a backup, like Jake Allen did in St. Louis, or Khudobin in Dallas, or Halak in Boston. They weren't guys who played just the second of back to back. They played significant minutes, so the goaltender was fresh when he got to the playoffs. And that's the one criticism of Freddie Andersen, that if he does get traded, I think it was unfair of the Leafs to load up 60 to 66 games over the first 3 years of his career, and then expected him to
Mm.
be fresh as a daisy when it got to the playoffs, especially since he would have to work so hard because their defense was terrible.
Why do I feel like the Leafs today are further away from reaching the promised land than they were when they started last season? I mean, that's a feeling based on this inability to shore up the right personnel. We're talking about Frederik Andersen as a guy who might be a past Maple Leaf, even though he's had great seasons and followed that up with failure in the playoffs. As part of the collective.
Well, I mean, I think it was the fact that everybody got excited that first year they made the playoffs with Washington, and the expectations jumped way too early with, the addition of Patrick Marleau. They weren't, we've said consistently over the length that we've done the convo that this team is an incomplete team, that they were flawed in a number of areas. A lot of fans thought they could outscore their
Mm.
problems, and that,
But they have a generate, and I keep interrupting. I'm sorry, and guys, Mike's in Buffalo. I'm in London. We're not face to face, or fisticuffs would break out, of course, and Mike would win every time because he's a Western New Yorker. The Leafs drafted a generational talent in Austin Matthews.
mm-hmm.
Why can't he? Why can't he lead this team by himself to the promised land? What is he not Sidney Crosby? Yes, Sidney Crosby did it. They put the right pieces around him. He did it. Connor McDavid's not having the same luck in Edmonton, but we know Edmonton's a tire fire. Alex Ovechkin, it took him 15 years to finally do it, but I mean, he did lead that team to new heights that it hadn't even come close to reaching before he got there. Why hasn't Austin Matthews been the guy to drive this thing forward, no matter by hook or by crook?
Well, you said it yourself. I mean, Sidney Crosby had Malkin, had Letang, had Fleury, had
But
Jordan Stahl. I mean, there was a supporting cast, and there was a good supporting cast.
Our Marner and Nylander, and Tavares not a supporting
It's
cast.
all
Like,
it's all up front, and that's been the issue. It's like, I mean, Morgan Riley is a very good defenseman, maybe top 15 in the league. He didn't have a great year last year because of injury, but he's one of the better defensemen in the league. But what else is there? I mean, I keep coming back to their defense. They've overloaded on
yeah,
up front.
of
And
course.
you have a $9 million or $10 million third line that doesn't score in the playoffs, and your defense, and you're playing Matt Martin Marinson.
Oh boy. Oh
You're
yeah.
playing Martin Marinson in game 5 against Columbus. You cannot
No.
have that. Now, the one thing is, I do believe that Kyle Dubas, he found a really good NHL defenseman in Rasmus Sandin. He did sign Jake Muzzin after trading for him. There has been some progress made on the blue line, but there, you look at Dallas, you look at Colorado with Makar and Johnsson and Bowen Byram and Connor Timmins coming, and Ryan Graves and Ian Cole. I mean, that's the stratosphere, and the Leafs are on the ground when it comes to the defense,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where this team needs to be. They need, I would say, at least two really good defensemen to be a serious contender. And I think that's where Kyle Dubas is going here. He's got to address that. He knows he has to. And finally, I think he's going to do it.
Yeah. What are the teams remaining in the playoffs doing? What can the Maple Leafs do to emulate that in part and incorporate all of the assets they have to make some damn strides, right? Brian Burke couldn't get it done. Mike Babcock couldn't get it done. Kyle Dubas comes in, the boy wonder, the Messiah. Whether you like him or not, guys, it's possible that Kyle Dubas, at the end of the day, will not have gotten it done.
Yeah.
Who will get it done? Right? Who will get it done? This idea that, well, the Maple Leafs are putting together this, this super team that's built through data and through projection, and the rest of the league will somehow conform around it, is ridiculous.
Well,
there are how many teams in the league now? 31, 32?
It's going on 32, yeah.
Kyle Dubas, we love him, but he's not the best general manager in the league. He's not the most wise general manager in the league. He doesn't have the best intelligentsia around him. You can say he does because you like him, and because he signed William Nylander, and he fired Mike Babcock, but he's not clearly his team is not good enough. And the way that he will become the best general manager is to use his intuition and use his savvy and use his people, but also grow and look and see what other programs are doing and go and do what they're doing, incorporating that with the gifts that his team has, and making those adjustments and moving forward. But I'll tell you what, if it's another first round exit or a missing of the playoffs because this team has to regress, that guy's going to lose his job.
Well,
and it's unfortunate. He's a good guy, but we have to really face the facts that this team has a lot of issues. It's got a lot of talent, but it's time to make the adjustments, and it's time to push forward and to make appreciable strides.
I think that Dubas recognized after the result this season that this team needs to improve, that it needs to improve in certain areas. I think he would be blind if he didn't recognize that. I also think he recognizes that there's a window here because, John Tavares, I believe, just turned 30 or is turning 30 fairly soon. You've got Matthews, Marner, and Tavares and Nylander locked up long term, but everybody realizes that that's not sustainable to have $40 million signed to 4 players. Maybe they keep Nylander for one more year to see if they can surround them with a better supporting cast and they have some success. But if they don't, then you know that Nylander is probably going to be the one of that group to go. They have a win, and Morgan Riley's under contract for 2 more years, and then it's going to cost them a lot to re-sign him. So they have a window here, and I think that Dubis recognizes that they need to upgrade immediately, and because they're going to be competing against Tampa and Boston and Philadelphia and the Islanders in that East, and it's going to be a tough road.
And the Leafs, at least optically, are lesser than all of those teams, with a generational talent on Austin Matthews and 3 of the best forwards in the league. It's bizarre. Just back to Freddie Andersen and through community, the response to our question: would you trade Freddie? Jeff Curry: I'd trade one of the big 4 before Freddie. James D: yes, I would. Double A: I honestly don't know what I would do with this team with the salary cap hell they are in. But the one thing I wouldn't do is trade Freddie. Justin DeMedeiros: I would. Ron Hainsey is a listener of the podcast, says Freddie would be moved if I was the Leafs for futures. Okay, I think I understand that. Jeff Kaufman: we can't trade up for a better goalie with our cap strap. So no, he's emphatic about that. Bradley 13, it depends. Ramsey Shaheda: has to be traded because they won't be able to fit him in for his new contract, so he'll have to walk. Maury Zelkovich, OG and longtime listener of the podcast: yes, and I'll tell you why. Well, Maury will read about that in community. Go for it. Arish: if we can sign someone like Leonard for the same price or cheaper, I would be down to trade Freddie. Benny B: fire Dubis, keep Freddie. And friend Rilslov 987, I think I got that wrong. I would not trade Freddie. So it's a bit of a mishmash, Mike, and it's good fodder for discussion. Will he end up being dealt? It's possible, and I'll tell you what, if he is, Kyle Dubas better have one effing grand plan for whoever replaces Freddie and what they want to do next. Before we go, let's just talk about some of the rumblings regarding Andreas Johnsson and my buddy, Zach Hyman. I like Johnsson too, but Zach Hyman, I know people want him on their team, but I don't want him off the Leafs.
No, and I think that Elliot Friedman reported that there were inquiries on Hyman, and that the Leafs basically said no thanks. He's a guy that they want to keep, and he's a type of player that they need more of. I wish they had four or 5 Zach Hymans, but with a year until unrestricted free agency, of course, general managers out there were going to put in the inquiry to see what the price was, and he had a great year offensively coming back off of the ACL injury. So I in fact, I think if they do end up trading Johnsson, which there's a possibility that happens, one of the first things that happens is that Hyman gets extended, because I think they want to lock him up and they want to make sure that he stays in blue and white.
Pretty succinct, Mike. Is that your last word, or do you have anything else to add?
No, last thing is I just think I wrote a couple days ago regarding the price that the Leafs would get back for Andersen. If they're trading Andersen, it's not going to be for a defenseman. It's not going to be for a big package coming back. They're wanting to open up the cap space to sign the other goaltenders. Mm-hmm. So they, and based on what Jake Allen got, who's a backup goaltender and making $4 million, the Blues got a 3rd round pick from Montreal. If based on that, then it's possible that Freddie Andersen could bring back either a top prospect or a second or even a low 1st round pick.
Can Kyle Dubas bolster this team to the extent that it will become a juggernaut by circumventing the issue that he created, spending so much money up front? Those 4 guys up front are unbelievable and perfect for a team in the NHL pre-2005. Can he add the right pieces, subtract, add, spend, nickel and dime, circumventing all the while the real issue? Or does that guy have to right his wrongs by pulling one of those guys out of the mix, recouping some money, and then actually spending with something where this team lacks, Mike, is how does Kyle Dubis do this? And I don't think he's trying to save face by standing pat and being, hard-headed about those four guys. I just feel like, he still believes that those guys can be a part of this team, and he can somehow strategically figure out how to spend what's left on players who are effective enough to complement them and get the job done. I don't think that's going to be the case. Employee pricing at Ford continues on for this month, and then it ends. That's some inside from me. If you are looking for another vehicle, you're not in London, come to London or call me and let me know. I'll get you set up. My buddy Mike Newsom was in community with his swanky sweater, the hoodie, looking good. He's my colleague there, one of my best pals. You can also get at him. You can find him on Instagram or on Facebook. He will gladly help you out. Employee pricing is as low as you get for discounts on new vehicles. This is what Ford employees and ex-employees get. They have to sign a contract that says, you know what, that's all the money you're going to receive off of this vehicle, because it is so low and the interest rates are really low too. Now is a really good time to buy. The only issue is inventory. So if you are interested, shoot me a message through community. You can get at me in a variety of platforms. I will certainly help you out. In the meantime, support Mike at hockeybuzz.com and everywhere else he does his thing, usually on the street corner with some spoons. So head on by with some nickels and dimes. Do you still have coins in the United States, Mike, or what are you guys using down there? Bitcoin?
Credit cards.
Credit cards. and lots of them. Michael, thanks a lot, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Norm.